She's got a smile and it sings to me, reminds me of childhood memories and everything. Mom, her hair reminds me of a wonderful place. And as a child, I don't know the words to this song, but fast forward to the good part. Alright, so I'm a little rusty. This is the third time I'm doing this now. First time I didn't have audio. Second time I didn't have visual. So now I'm confirming on this camera that I have visual. Confirming on this camera I have visual. I'm confirming on this one that I have audio. Ready? Are you ready? Let's go to the booth. Welcome to the third version of this video that I'm doing for you guys, known as the identity booth. And we're going to be talking today about something that is super important. I'm kind of happy I've had the third time to kind of talk about this because I've now rendered my thoughts to the most important core facts, minus all the bullshit. And the facts are, Rodney Reed was 4 or 5 days away. I just said I had the facts and I don't know what the facts are. But he was about 4 or 5 days away from being executed. And this is important. This is significant because it speaks to the sins of our fathers. Rodney Reed being killed and murdered by the state would allow a bunch of the sins of that state to go away because it's much easier to defend yourself against a dead person than it is a living person. That is why every officer is instructed to double tap and shoot first and ask questions later. It's just the facts. But it's important for us to gain context to Rodney Reed and his situation. And it's super important for everyone to realize how narratives change. 3.7 million people signed a change.org petition to stop or stay this man's execution. Now, in that 3 million, there's about half of the people there are smarter than you and me. Easily. So when I see posts pop up like this, that Rodney Reed's a monster because of the Supreme Court's Texas testimony on 4 other crimes that seem similar to his crime and they tried to pin it on him, it makes me think like, don't y'all know this is what they've been doing to black people since the dawn of their existence in this country? Like, for black people to so quickly go from free this man to he's a monster because of court documents that have no conviction, that are just merely accusations. But because of where they're coming from, the Supreme Court, you stay, you sit, boy. You listen here, girl. I'm gonna tell you how you need to feel about your own people. And you agree. You fucking agree with a system that has admitted to harassing your people 60% more than any other race in this country by comparison. You agree with a state that in 2016 had 14% of their death row inmates found not guilty of the crimes they were being set to be executed for within a year. So when you start reading these articles, context is key. Understand why someone is telling you something. It is because they want you to believe something without understanding another aspect of it. 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 minus 2 is 2. They're asked backwards and the same, and the context is key. It's all about what direction you're going to. But Rodney Reed's case, in regards to the other falsely proven case, just to give you the context, it's pseudoscience, and some of it's pseudoscience, and the other half is just error use. When a rape kit happens and it sits on ice and doesn't get touched or doesn't get revitalized or isn't used appropriately, you lose precious DNA. you lose precious amounts of information that could be helped to you to differentiate or tell what's going on. And basically, when a pool of DNA is found and you can pull multiple people's DNA from it, that is not usable DNA. When there's more than one form of DNA found into a spill, more than two actually, it becomes unusable at that point. Because it's just too many. We have too many similarities and not enough differences for you to be able to point. That's how they're able to come up with this. Well, it's only a 1 in 5.5 million. Yeah, that's more than enough. And that is the margin of error when it comes to something of that nature. It's just not usable. And back in the 90s, that was all they had. So that's of course what they use. Now we have way more ways of refining it. But even in today's science, we cannot break down something that has been joined by the hip of more than two people. It's just not possible for us. We can't see it. So that's bullshit. His semen didn't match. Guess what? When they compared it to his brother and his father, it didn't match them either. It was considered foreign. It was considered foreign for him, no match for his father and his brother, the people that would be closest linked to his DNA. You see the bullshit that they try and throw in your face? You have to think about narratives. It's so important to think about narratives today, especially in today's culture. When someone is telling you something, you have to ask yourself logically, why are you telling me this? What is it that you want me not to believe? And if you can't discern that information, if you just gullibly shake your head and follow like sheeple, you're the problem. I'm sorry to say it. You are the reason you're struggling in life. It's your fault. No, your boss is an asshole. But it's only affecting you because you're a dumbass. I'm here to give you the truth you need, not the truth you deserve. Rodney Reed wasn't going to die. Remember this. But there's a bunch of people we need to thank. Sean King and anybody who signed that petition for his stay of his execution, you're a fucking hero. If Rodney Reed had enough life in his life to write you a letter, all of you individually, I think he would. I know he would. But I feel like the people who wrote their names down on that petition, they wanted to be on the right side of history. But for every person we have to thank, there's also a group of people we have to scold. And Governor Abbott of Texas, he's a paraplegic. I know you're not supposed to make fun of disabled people, but if he was coming down a ramp and the ramp was detachable, I'd pull the ramp so he couldn't go any further and just glare at him. Because that's how I felt for the last 20 days when we were begging you, pleading with you to stay this man's execution, but you didn't. You ignored us. So why should anyone pay attention to you? It's always the person who just, what's wrong with you, man? You didn't answer a single call for help with this guy. How many people hit you up? How many people called your office looking for help with this case and situation, and you did not care because it was a black man's life? And not only that, but him dying also dies the shame, the blatant disregard for justice and due process for the black man in this situation. It is a colloquial, we know what we're doing, wink and a nod, and a fuck you to everyone else who was fighting to save this guy's life. Rodney Reed was not going to die. And the reason why is because Rodney Reed was going to be used as a political ploy. And I think a lot of people figured that out around week 1 when Governor Abbott refused to say anything about this man who was about to be executed in his state, as a person in Georgia was being executed in another state for another crime that I don't know if he was guilty of, but if he was guilty of it, I'm going to give my opinion now. And I'm going to let you know if I think he should have been executed now. But Governor Abbott, he had motherfucking time to wish his wife happy birthday. Man, fuck your wife. You're playing with people's lives here. And it's not amusing. Rodney Reed is an innocent man sitting in jail. And if that isn't proof enough that we need to get rid of the death penalty, I don't know what else is. 60% of African Americans experience worse treatment by our justice system, by our social economic system than any other race. And you want to sit here and tell me you believe the same justice system that told you he was guilty is gonna do right by him now? No, we gotta bring this by force. So people like Shaun King are fucking heroes, man. And remember, like last year, he had to go. Sometime last month, he was going through all his Reed receipts because there were phonies out there calling him out, talking about he's just another one of these. You guys are so annoying. You're so vexing. Oh, it's the same attitude I have towards the people who are now all about caring about missing kids and have just relentlessly been posting missing kid posts on their Facebook feed and their Twitter feed, and I click on it and I see that the person was found 8 days ago. I look back down and see how many times it's been shared. It's been shared over 6 times. It's like a moth to the flame. You are so preoccupied with being perceived as a person who helps people that you don't even realize you are killing people with your blatant disregard for human life. How, you ask? Because the boy that cried wolf didn't just die in the fire. Anyone who was stuck in the house with him when he cried wolf all those times and kept getting the false alarms, but when it finally set fire, anyone who was sitting there with that idiot also died. And they died because they thought you as a friend would never do something as dumb as share something without vetting it. Why don't people vet information? Well, I know why, because you're stupid. But it's killing people. And admittedly, when Rodney Reed's story popped up, even after seeing Dr. Phil's documentary on it, even after reading up on Shaun King's write up on it and hearing his podcast, it wasn't enough for me. It wasn't until I read the 43-page Supreme Court testimony on it and saw that nowhere in the document did they say they had conclusive evidence that this man had committed any of these 4 crimes. That's when I knew that's when it clicked, like, duh. Of course they don't. Why would they? All white jury sounds good to me. Fair and balanced. The reason why Rodney Reed wasn't going to die is because he was going to be used as a political ploy by Donald Trump to help detract the attention away from his impeachment inquiry. It was going to help detract the attention away from the 20-odd people who name-dropped people or had first-hand knowledge about the quid pro quo with a foreign government. It would have detracted attention how the Republicans would fuse the Republican White House refused to let John Bolton testify. Pompeo, who all had first-hand account of the conversation. It's proof that our president said it, the fucking commander in orange said it on national TV and released the transcript and still thinks he's innocent. This man thinks he could shoot a guy on 5th Avenue and get away with it. You don't think that he's above this? And then there's this people on my timelines talking about how the lady is crying and complaining. She was forced out of her job. She was a career diplomat with high honors. She was forced out of her position, sent death threats every day. And this person, and he's a lawyer. His name's well, we don't name people on the podcast, so I'll have to bleep that. But he's a lawyer. And it's just telling of his personality. And there's an interesting story. This will be a one-off story about how this person and me, even as a child, I knew that there wasn't something, not his integrity. he wasn't a good person, and there was a way I knew this as a kid. As a kid, I played baseball with this guy, and while we played baseball, I don't even remember who won. You know what? In fact, I do remember. Our team won, and it was actually based off of a hit I had batted in as the last batter. And they had purposely been throwing away from me because anytime I had a clean hit, I would knock that motherfucker out of the park. But they were purposely throwing away from me. And I was able to clip a ball and I got a bat in, we ran it in. And at the end, as a team, both teams line up and we shake hands over home plate. That's what we do. And I saw in the distance that he had spit in his hand. He spit in his hand and was shaking our teammates' hands. And I saw that in the distance and I thought to myself, that's not nice. That's not good. So when he made it to me, I cold clocked him in the stomach and knocked him over. It was a direct hit. He felt that shit. But that night, I definitely thought I was getting in trouble. I thought my father was going to have something to say. I thought, like, for sure they were going to kick me off the team. I didn't really like baseball. It was kind of boring, especially when the daisies weren't out. I didn't have anything colorful to look at, just grass. But I didn't get anything. Not a word. Not a word from the parents. Not a word from his coach. Not a word from my coach. I don't know why, because he did it. He did it, and his parents knew he was capable of doing something like that, or he had been caught in the past. And it just reaffirmed this issue. And now that I see him as an adult, that situation sits with me. It's a constant reminder of the type of person he really is. So to see him badger and berate a female diplomat, a female who are notoriously mistreated and downplayed, and their cries for help when they're being mistreated and downplayed are ignored. To see him berate her at the cost of defending a person who's already admitted they are guilty, it's just telling of the type of people we're dealing with, man. He's a lawyer. New study came out. Federal judges who are assigned by Republicans incarcerate African Americans at a higher rate. Back to the story. The fact is, Donald Trump was going to use Rodney Reed and make a heroic event in the last hour, tweet out something about, we're not going to let this man die. And he was going to make it all dramatic. They would have had a sit-in. They would have been planned. They would have had Abbott in the White House to say, yes, you're right, President. Let me make the call. And they would have called it directly into the execution. And they would have had a camera crew there to videotape it. And just to see Reed's reaction when he finds out that President Trump, the person who claims to be the most pro-black president for African Americans in the history of America. Mind you, Lincoln freed them slaves, but Trump is the most pro-black president, and he did the most for black people with the bill, with the crime bill change, and black people have never been this unemployed, have never been this employed ever in the history of crime. Yeah, that's the rule. That's how progression works. The person after you, Trump, will be the president who's done the most for black people because their employment would have been even lower than yours. That's how it works, you idiot. But he claims these things. And he would have used this, he would put this feather in his cap and be like, I saved Rodney Reed. Not the 3 million people who signed a petition, not the over 700,000 phone calls per day into his office. None of that shit. It was Trump. And he would have used it, to deflect the inquiry, deflect the quid pro quo, deflect all the negative news media, and there would have just been a circus around how he used the exploit of a man almost about to be executed to get himself out of trouble. Rodney Reed wasn't going to die. The only thing that was going to die was his dignity and a little bit more of our justice system and whatever this bullshit democracy is that you call it. We're letting our people down, and we're letting them down with a smile on our fucking face. And that can't be acceptable anymore. It can't be acceptable anymore. We need to do better, and we need to have the capacity to be able to do it. And part of doing it is just giving one tiny inch of a fuck more about one another and trying to hold people accountable, especially the people who have the power. Be the eyes that they fear to do wrong in front of. That's all we ask. But this is the identity booth. And as you guys know, I love your feedback. That last video I did that blew up, I'm still responding to some of the questions and comments and concerns. And I've been getting letters from people who have experienced sex trafficking and want to tell their story to me. And I'm trying to figure out how to best deal with that. But it's important that I tell you guys this because I want you to know I care. Furthermore, this is what the identity booth is for. I'm trying to identify with you as you identify with me. And I hope we were able to accomplish that. Let me know what you think about Rodney Reed's situation. Let me know what you think about the justice system in general. Let me know what you think about my one-off story. Tell me, comment, like, share, subscribe. Do the damn thing. The 36% of you guys that are here, let me see some 36%. Well, no, I guess that is my good like ratio. But continue to be good to each other. Take care of one another. Hit up my little brother's website. All the information will be in the description below. Give him a shout out. Grab a shirt. Makes your guns look good, as I approve of. But thank you guys for being here with me. I really appreciate it. And hope y'all